Yeah, I think streamers in the European market have had an enormous impact on basically every part of the value chain of audiovisual content. So from the consumption, traditional broadcasters now have to compete for the attention of the viewers with streamers, to the expectations of user comfort and the fact that catalogs are very user friendly, easy to scroll, you can binge watch, you have all kinds of subtitles and so on. That has changed how we look at as a consumer at content. It has fundamentally changed production of audiovisual content, because now again traditional players need to compete for rights or need to compete for good quality exclusive content with these streamers. And broadcasters, for example, are now also losing out on interesting deals because everyone wants to collaborate with a streamer, because that opens the window to the world. Nonetheless, we also see from figures that despite Netflix and others becoming such important investors in European content, we see that traditional broadcasters, commercial broadcasters, public broadcasters are still the most important in funding audiovisual content. The Audiovisual Media Service Directive creates actually three incentives where streaming services are obliged to promote European works. One is the 30% quota for European works. The second is the fact that it's not just enough to have 30% of European works in your catalog, but also put them very prominent in your catalog. And the third is that it leaves the member state the option to create investment obligations, either in the form of a levy or in the form of direct investments, or a combination of both, as we have seen in France, for example. Now, the combination of this, I think, has really incentivized or obliged players to do more. We are often only focusing on Netflix because we know Netflix very well. We see a lot of European commissions, but at the same time, players like Apple, Disney, and Amazon, to some extent, they have really lagged behind in European investments. And we do see that in countries where investment obligations are created, that these players are also now doing what they need to do and investing in European works. The main problem, I think, is the fragmentation of these measures. You see that all across Europe, member states are creating investment obligations, but in each country, it's transposed in a different way. So that not only makes it very difficult for streamers to comprehend which rules are applicable in which country, but it also creates some internal competition within the European Union, where you see that stronger markets like France have very good investment obligations because they're also a stronger market. They have more bargaining power when dealing with these streamers, whereas you see in smaller markets, the investment obligations are less ambitious, less strong. So the difference that exists between large and small markets in this way is constantly being reiterated or consolidated. And I think Europe as a whole would really benefit from some harmonization of these differences that exist within the investment obligations. What you see in the offering of American streamers when it comes to European content and their investments, we see that there is more and more choice to also invest in what we call the full originals, where these players take up a much higher percentage of the production budget, and that has to do with the fact that they can also then claim the rights or keep the rights. Whereas in the beginning, we see that streamers mostly invested in what we call licensed originals. So basically, they pick up the distribution rights for worldwide release or for a large part of the territory. But the budget itself was mostly made up for by traditional players, broadcasters, and so on. Now, it's very difficult to say what typifies or characterizes this European content, because it's also linked to the diversity of its markets and also linked to the diversity of the producers that they work with. What we do see is that that a lot of streamers have really created stories that really appeal to international audience. And what's happening there is a very interesting and sometimes ironic move, where on the one hand, these players claim to be hyper local. Netflix, for example, always says we're producing local for local. A series has to work in its own market first. But what we also see at the same time, that you get a formatization of local, some sort of universalization of local. You see that the story seems very local, but at the same time it needs to appeal to international audiences. And this will become, I think, one of the crucial challenges for European producers and screenwriters, that they really stick to this true authenticity of what characterizes that market or that nation or that culture or that language, and yet at the same time create stories that have universal appeal. I sometimes have the feeling that a lot of screenwriters are writing with the idea of this needs to be a Netflixable show, this needs to be a show that could be shown to the world, and that they automatically also start writing for a universal audience. But in a lot of cases, this has shown not to be the most valuable strategy in the long run. Staying true to what is really your local culture, local stories, local narratives, often gets you much more success on the international markets. As for the promotion campaigns, we see that in smaller markets, players rarely invest in the promotion of local titles, and this not necessarily has to do with the fact that they don't want it. Of course, it's very costly if per citizen, if you have less citizens, to develop a very ambitious marketing campaign. But it also has to do with the fact that a lot of these local originals are often co-productions with existing broadcasters, and then it is the broadcasters that really take care of the promotion. If you look at larger markets, you see that it's very clear that the promotion strategy goes to a very limited number of local titles. It's often the titles that they either want to gain a lot of new subscribers with, Sky Rojo in Spain, for example, Squid Game in Korea, but the preference for most players seem to go to, in their promotion, seems to go to the big American hits. An example from my own country, when HBO Max was launched in Belgium not so long ago, the main promotion outlets were House of Dragon and Dune, which is not surprising because this is also what a lot of Belgian viewers wanted to see. And there is also a lack of Belgian originals, so even if they wanted to, they could not even promote local titles.